Okay, welfare analysis. Now, in this chapter, we'll basically cover the essentials of welfare analysis. And my goal of this chapter is to motivate a way of thinking about economics and not so much of digging into the technical details of each component of supply and demand, but more importantly, right, what is the value of these models and how can we utilize these way of thinking to solve problems that we will discuss later on in the chapter. Right? Now, traditional economics, right? This is the basic idea: is resources are scarce, right? And because of the scarcity, right, we need to study of how society manages a scarce resource. All right. So for example, right, you take the movie Castaway by Tom Hanks. Right, in the movie, he is constantly battling trade-offs. Right, should he spend time building a raft or should he spend time looking for food? Now, the cost of building the raft in this case is food, right? And same vice versa. The cost of food, right, in this case is the raft. And because he's by himself, there is no currency, there's no money involved, and yet the essence of economic and the law of economics still applies to him. Right? So the resource that he needs to allocate efficiently is time, and whatever he does or whatever he decides to do with his time, with his resource, he has to give up is the opportunities that he gave up, right? And that's the real cost of allocation, or sorry, that's the real cost of any activity, right? That's how we should think about it. Right? All right, now. What do we mean by, in society, what do we mean by allocation of resource? Well, here are three fundamental questions that every society has to answer, regardless of the government system. Right? It can be socialism, capitalism, democracy, monarchy. Right? It doesn't matter. Every society needs to answer these three questions: what and how much to produce, who should produce it, and then who should consume it. Right? Just think of this as a thought. Take this thought exercise. Right? You have a benevolent leader. Right? She is good, and she can rule the land with absolute power. Right? And she has the best and the purest intention. Now, suppose that she needs. King's Landing needs more doctors. Okay, so how should she decide? How does she make this decision? Right, she needs to decide how many doctors should we have, and what kind of doctors should we have? More surgeons? Right? Should we have more physicians? Right? And who in our society should be doctors? Right? And who in our society should consume these goods and services? Right? Who these healthcare once you have these doctors? Right? And I hope to encourage you to kind of think about how to answer these questions. And what an economist would say is, well, you run into an information problem very quickly. Right? The problem is, how many doctors should we have and what kind? Well, we need to know what kind of doctors people need. But then how will one go about doing that? How would you know what you have a society of millions of people? How do you know what they need, right? And who should be doctors, right? You want good doctors, right? And to train doctors, right, you need to give them houses, you need to feed them while they're in training, and so you want to do it as efficiently as possible. Right? And finally, who in society should consume it? And this is the most difficult question to answer, right? Who should get the limited healthcare that we have? Now you might say, well, why would there be a limit in healthcare? Well, let's just spend more on healthcare. Let's just have a maximum amount of healthcare so that's available for everybody. Well, even on that question, right, is not so quite clear on what healthcare is. Right? For example, right, if you're in the U.S., you can get opioid or pain medication much easier than in Europe or Japan. Right? And if you're European or Japanese, you do complain, right? This is a lack of option for you. And by the way, this is not just opioid prescription, right? This is all medication. So being in the U.S. For especially like take cancer, for example, right? You have available to you, much more, many more different prescriptions and treatments than our European counterpart. Now, regardless of you agree or not, or and then you can have your opinion on what's the best way. My point being that even something as simple as healthcare, or maybe not that simple, right? We don't necessarily agree on what healthcare is, right? So then, so clearly, right, we need to have some way. We need some way of making these decisions. Now, welfare analysis. So what is welfare analysis? It's the evaluation of benefit that consumers and suppliers obtain from economic transaction. Basically, right. Is using the fact that we get benefit, and when I say we, I mean consumers and suppliers, right? We gain benefits from economic transactions. So, for example, gasoline, right? Our economy produces gasoline, okay? So then we are trying to figure out then how much benefit we, as a society, we get from gasoline, right? How much benefit consumers get. So that's the economic value of gasoline minus their purchase price, and how much benefit suppliers get, which is the purchase price minus the cost of production. Right? So together, this is the benefit from gasoline. And so from that benefit, from the measurement of that benefit, we can answer these questions. Right? How much should we produce gasoline at all? And if we do, how much of it we should produce? Right? And once we produce it, and who in our society should produce it, right? And after we produced it, who in our society should consume it, right? And so here's the basic criteria, and we'll go into each of these in detail in a moment. This one, efficient allocation, we'll go through this in detail later next week, right? When we officially go into chapter 3, all right? But this measurement is what we're going to call efficient allocation or optimal allocation. Now, who in society should produce it? Well, voluntary entry and exit, right? To and from the market. So basically, people who like to produce it, who can produce it, then they can go in and produce it. Okay, and who in society should consume it? Well, we're gonna in welfare analysis, right? We are going to say that the optimal allocation of goods is if we give it to whoever value it the most. Right. So this is the criteria on how to allocate how to allocate resources under welfare analysis. Right? And so we will begin on a slightly different order. We'll begin with the second question, the theory of supply, that will try to answer who in a society should produce the goods and services.